Hey guys, Mike with Mike Latzer Photography here, and today I want to walk through editing of an image I recently did, or a set I recently did, that was Beetlejuice, Marilyn Monroe, mashup themed, inspired, I guess is the way to put it. It's actually a funny story. This came about because I was planning another shoot with this model. Her name's Emma, and she was presenting dresses, and she happened to show this one dress. I was like, that'd be really cool for Beetlejuice, and she immediately said yes, let's do it. So naturally that was what we did. So we had a lot of fun with the shoot, all kinds of good stuff right there, and it's a really fun image that we're going to work through. Actually, two images, and I kind of want to describe my editing process so you can see the kind of detail and the work that goes into creating these images, at least on the back end after they're already captured. So hopefully it is somewhat instructive. I'm going to try and explain the processes, the tools, why I'm doing things, how they're supposed to benefit, all that kind of stuff. So let's get to it. So this is one of the earlier images in the set, and what I'm showing here is Capture One, which is my raw processing editor. It's also where I tether into to take the images, so they're coming up live and I can actually make adjustments. So the first thing is adjusting white balance, making sure that all makes sense. Then I'll go in and adjust contrast, some shadows, and I do a lot of back and forth here between the tone curve, which is having a little more adjustment in various locations, whether it be highlights, shadows, darks, whites. One of the nice things about Capture One is you can edit in the Luma channel, which means I'm only changing the tonality, or I'm sorry, the luminosity of these regions. I'm not affecting the color, which is really powerful. It means there's no color shift when I make those adjustments. So you can see a little bit of the before and after with just these small tweaks that I've made already. And I'm going in and just continually making revisions. Here I'm now doing a little bit of dodging and burning, particularly dodging, which just means that I'm lightening certain areas. So I'm using a very soft brush. I'm using a very light brush, which means like 20% opacity, 5% flow, which means that each stroke is very, very minor, very, very minimal. So it's a very gradual buildup. And I'm just going through and just trying to even out skin tones, making sure that everything looks smooth. She's got great skin already. I'm just trying to improve that where I can and make things look more seamless across the line. Again, a little bit of the before and after. It's something that I got to do routinely, is making sure that I can see what I'm trying to do and see the effect that I'm creating, and also make sure that I do a good job. So you can see the differences here between the two images, before and after, some of those things. And what's helpful here is I can now copy paste those settings to similar images with similar lighting. But this is the next photo that we're going to work with. This is, I think, the hero shot, the big one. So I'm going to do a similar set of tweaks to get this one lined up, going through white balance, tweaking exposure, shadows, highlights, the works, getting it as prepared as I can prior to bringing it into Photoshop and doing the detailed editing, because this is where I have the most flexibility and wiggle room, so to speak, to make changes. Again, going through, doing a little bit of dodging, dodge, burn. I always get them mixed up. One's brightening, one's darkening. I just know curve up, curve down, and which way I want to do it. So I don't remember the technical term, but I'm just trying to, again, balance out certain tones, making sure that it's more easy transitions between light and dark, smoother stuff. And this is actually a really great way of relieving wrinkles in clothing, skin, stuff like that. You can change or alleviate the difference between the highlights and the shadowed areas, so it looks, it's an easier transition again, so you don't see that big bump, so to speak. So it kind of reduces the effect of a wrinkle or anything like that. So yeah, making those tweaks. And you can see with the red pop-up, that's the mask, so that's where the brush has been applied, or the effect has been applied. So now we're actually going to open it up in Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is I go in with the lasso tool and do content aware fill and clean up a lot of obvious blemishes. So I usually start on the floor. This is getting rid of the lines in the floor, wrinkles in the paper that I used as the background. And then again, it's just going around the image and seeing what I can work on. So I try to do anything that's considered a destructive edit first, which means that once I edit it, I can't change it. I can't easily like mask it out or make changes after the fact. It's kind of like you make the change and you're kind of stuck there. So do those first before I do other things, so I've got some more wiggle room. Not always great at it. Sometimes I'm kind of just like, oh, let me do this, let me do that, and it doesn't always go as well as you'd like, but that's the way it goes. So as you can see, I'm slowly removing certain distracting elements from the image, including doing hair. So content aware fill is one of my favorite tools for getting rid of hairs, especially with the lasso tool, so I can, pinpoint the exact, shape of the hair, get really fine selections, and, clean up all that stuff so it looks better. This is probably the most frustrating thing for me to do. It's the most time consuming. It just put on some good music or a good show on Netflix and just go for it. And with a wig like this, there's really no way of getting it all, so it's kind of just picking the obvious annoying ones. With straight hair, especially natural hair, it's very much easier to do this. It's still very time consuming, and you don't always get the results you want, but it cleans things up tremendously, as you can see. Alrighty, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit more because this takes a very long time and you don't need to see all this in the nitty-gritty detail. Alrighty, so that's a weird spot. Don't know where that came from. Okay, interesting. Sometimes weird things happen when you're going fast. Okay, so doing a lot of zooming in, zooming out, checking things, seeing where it goes. The next thing I'm going to do here is actually use the liquefy tool, and that's what gets a lot of photographers in trouble. It's where I'm going to push and move various things to clean it up and change the shape of it. So I don't know if I'm going to keep this with the hair. I might actually change it back because I kind of like the wild and crazy look, but you can see the difference of how I can change the shape and still keep a natural look to the hair because I'm not getting rid of the curls, I'm just compressing it. I'll also tweak the dress a little bit to make it a little more smooth, that transition. So just, yeah, liquefy is one of those things where less is more. You want to try and keep things minor because otherwise you can see the pixel stretch and it doesn't look good. Yeah, so working on that. Reduced her shoulder a little bit so it doesn't look as pointy. Emma's going to kill me when she sees this video. And what I'm doing now is what's called a freeze tool. So what it means is I can adjust just that part of her body and the other pixels won't stretch with it. So it just kind of protects things and makes sure I'm only manipulating the regions that I want to manipulate. And it's very it's very common for me to do manipulation and liquefy, do a couple before and after looks, see how it's going, and then completely pull it back and reduce the amount that I did. Because again, I can be a little heavy-handed with it. I think everybody gets a little heavy-handed. You get a little carried away when you do this. So you start once, you set up, and then there's a tool in there called Reconstruct where you slowly bring back the manipulated pixels. So we did that. Now I'm going to go in and just do a little more cleanup again on the hair. Just follow it up. Get rid of any extra distractions or stray hairs, and maybe get rid of a loop here and there if it's a little too much, a little too out there. And I'm going to speed this one up as well because, again, editing hair just gets really, really tedious. Actually, editing in general gets very, very tedious, especially when you're doing it on a fine resolution detail like this. Editing for Instagram, you can get away with a lot of stuff. You don't have to be as nitty-gritty as this. I photograph to do large prints, so I like printing work for my clients and encourage them to buy artwork that's 30 inches across. So I mean, you're gonna see all this little detail. All right, so the next step is Well, I do a lot of groupings and combine sections so I know what's going on. Helps keep track of the editing layers and what each one represents. But the next thing I'm doing here is actually a preset, or not a preset, it's an AI filter called Retouch for Me. That's really, really incredible. It helps to smooth the skin out. It also does a little bit of skin smoothing, so minor dodging and burning, or local dodge and burn. Hard to see here running it on this image. I'm pretty sure the AI algorithm was just like, I don't know what's going on. Because of her makeup, it's kind of like, this is a face I don't understand. Or, you know, Emma just has great skin to begin with, so it didn't really have much to do. It always finds something, but don't tell anyone. So, going through that, now here's another cleanup layer. Again, I'm always following up any large action with some sort of cleanup activity. Usually the spot healing brush, the healing brush, or the clone stamp tool, usually on a new layer, so it's non-destructive. I can always go back and change it very easily. And again, I do this multiple rounds throughout an image as I'm editing it, because there's some things that I just catch later than I would like. But again, it's always catching it and working with it. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is frequency separation. And I'm actually gonna do this process twice on this image. So what frequency separation does is it separates the detail from the color of an image. It actually puts them on two separate layers. So what that allows me to do is edit, say, skin texture without changing the color underneath it. So it helps minimize any color shifts, make sure it stays consistent. You can see here now I'm working on the color itself. So it keeps the skin detail without affecting the skin detail. And I can just, you know, even out the color so the transitions look a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner. As you can see, I'm slowly reworking that. So it's a really, really powerful tool, and it actually allows you to edit a lot faster and a lot cleaner and do some really, really complicated edits very quickly and efficiently. So we'll label that as skin. And then I'm going to run the action again, another round of frequency separation. And this one I'm going to focus on the dress. The reason why I have to run the action twice is because with frequency separation, you want to adjust it based on the texture that you're working with. So the skin had one type of texture, the clothing has a very different type of texture. So I had to use some different adjustments to make that work. And what I also did here was I used a separate curves layer to increase the exposure on the image so I can see all the detail in the dark dress and make those edits much more easily. And again, because that curves layer is non-destructive, I can delete it after I've finished doing this edit, and the image will go back to the exposure that I wanted at. So it's kind of more like a helper tool than it is an actual adjustment at this point when I'm editing. So it's very, very powerful, and you know, allows me to do a lot better job editing, even for details that probably won't notice, but you know, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I go ahead and do that stuff. So yeah, but as you can see, I'm kind of working through the detail side of the dress, and I'll constantly flip back and forth between the detail layer and the color layer to make sure it's blended very well and smoothly and all that kind of stuff. I try usually to start with texture before I do color, but it also depends on what I'm trying to edit and the surface I'm trying to edit. You know, the bodice on the dress, for the most part, other than those couple of wrinkles, was pretty clean. And the color transitions were pretty smooth, so that's why I just focused on the texture on that one, getting those wrinkles out. All right, and again, frequency separation, kind of like everything else in Photoshop, is a very tedious, long process, especially when you have a dress that is very, very wrinkled. So I'm going to speed this part up. So I'm now going to follow up frequency separation with more content aware fill. And the reason I do that is because frequency separation is great, but there are certain times where if it gets too close to certain edges that are very drastically different in color, it'll bleed the color through when you make an edit, so it doesn't work that great. So again, I'll usually add a content aware fill layer and just do some additional editing and cleanup, and can kind of go back and forth as much as I can where possible. So what I'm going to do here now is kind of a follow-up to frequency separation, and that's another round of the content aware fill tool using the lasso. Sometimes this is probably me not being as great with the frequency separation as I could be. Sometimes for me it's just easier and I get better results if I just use content aware fill, which is the AI replacement tool built into Photoshop, which is probably my favorite tool. So I'm just following up, and it allows me to get some more edges in. With frequency separation, there's sometimes an issue with two very, very different colors when they're right next to each other. You get some bleed and some wonky effects, and again, it's part of how you set it up. So to get those kind of changes across crazy patterns like this with the stripes, sometimes content aware is actually the better tool. So there's no one right way to do things in Photoshop, which is often why I will try things in one tool and then go back and do it again in another tool. Anyone who's curious about content aware, it's kind of what it sounds like, which is you select an area and you say fill it in, and Photoshop kind of judges the pixels, the patterns, sees what's going on, and tries to sample from multiple areas with similar tones, colors, patterns, all that kind of stuff, and fills in that same spot with those other things to make it more seamless and smooth. It's always trying to smooth it out, or usually it's pretty smart to remove distracting elements as well. So it's a really powerful tool. And as always, following up with a clone stamp layer or spot healing or the healing brush, just doing those little extra changes to clean up anything I couldn't get with the other previous tools like frequency separation or content aware. All right, so next I'm going to do a dodge and burn layer, which I talked a little bit about with the raw processor in Capture One. And all this is doing, I say all, it's actually pretty powerful, which is amazing because all you're really doing is lightening or brightening certain pixels. So you're selectively choosing which one to lighten or brighten. And it's pretty wild. You can really change a lot about how the image looks, the dynamic of it. You can use it as a skin retouching tool, getting rid of wrinkles, getting rid of texture. Really, really powerful stuff. I use it more as a general shaping tool to direct the light and add more dimension to things. But occasionally I do use it as a de-wrinkling tool if, content aware or frequency separation have failed me. Dodge and burn is usually my last resort for fixing wrinkles, just because it's the slowest and most tedious version, because again, you're using a very, very faint brush that you build up layer by layer by layer. So it takes a long time to work something out like a wrinkle. But again, one of the fun things about working in dodging and burning is I can do it based on luminosity values instead of changing color. Although if you brighten something significantly or darken something significantly, you will get a little bit of a color shift. So I always have a safety layer, which is a color layer, or a blank layer that's set to color, so I can paint on a color and it won't change the texture, it'll just apply a color so I can make sure I keep the original color tones and whatnot. It's actually very similar to adjusting the color layer in a frequency separation action. So now I'll also do some shaping for the overall background, kind of like a light silhouette to shape the image again, draw attention to Emma in the middle, which it's kind of hard not to with the crazy hair and the lighting we got going on here. But always doing a little detail work like that. And again, in here, I'm kind of trying to eliminate some of the wrinkles or the depth of the wrinkles so they're a little more reduced. Yeah, it's pretty wild what you can do with dodging and burning. And then once again, as always, following up with another round of cleanup. I don't know, I always catch little things because I'm moving along and I don't always see blemishes and tweaks right off the bat. But all right, so that's the Photoshop edit. And now what I'm going to do is go through the presets panel in Capture One. So I bring it back into my raw processor, and these presets are ones that I've gotten through Capture One, and they're just different effects to help with color and tone and really change the mood of the image. So it gives a little extra pop, and I'll usually apply several layers of this so I can get stack different effects, and you can change the opacity of the different ones. So a lot of this is going through the library of presets that I have and looking at each one, seeing, ooh, this could work, that could work. I'll usually, grab 3 or 4 of the ones that look the best to me, and then I'll toggle between them and see which one works best, remove the ones that don't. And if, they do work well in tandem as a combination, I'll stack them, turn the several preset layers on, and then I'll change the opacities of each, which changes the amount that the effect shows up to get the final look that I want to achieve. Alrighty, so that image is officially edited. Pretty sure I got it all the way gone, so we're gonna compare it to the original, and you can see it's a pretty significant difference here. Removing the elements in the background, changing the shape of the hair, doing the cleanup in the dress and the skin and the floor. You can also look at the color differences based on the mood and tone with those presets we did. Pretty awesome. So now I'm going to take the edited image, put it into my output folder, so I know that image is done and edited. It's also color coded, so yellow means it's done, and then green is the final color tone. Surprise, surprise for this image. So that is me editing an image, pretty detailed. It's an extensive process. This video is 20-something minutes long. That entire editing sequence in real time was 1 hour and 47 minutes. So it's not trivial to do this kind of editing work. I take great pride in the editing work. I hope I'm a decent editor. Again, you got to go through this kind of detail for shots, especially for my clients who were printing, anywhere from 11 by 16s all the way up to a 30 by 40 image, which is pretty freaking massive, and you're going to see little nuance and detail. So those edges have to be really clean. All those little, small wrinkles, blemishes, whatnot, you got to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And I'm twisted enough to enjoy it. Not really, but I do for my clients because I know it's worth it. So that is kind of my editing process. General buckets, I think I do frequency separation, retouching, dodge and burn on every single image. It's just a matter of how much and where and when. When? Yeah, when. I guess when works. I don't know. Rambling. Okay. But yeah, so that's the editing process once again. If you want to see the gallery of these images, they're on my Instagram page. I also have a fun little reel of the BTS, of the actual shooting of the session, which Emma's got some awesome dance moves if you want to see that. I'll link to it in this video, or the post, that thing. Anyways, once again, I'm Mike. If you like what you see, the crazy image work, or just want to work with me, portrait photography, anything like that, or have questions about lighting or editing, give me a shout. I'm happy to help. Or again, if you're interested in getting some crazy, wild, fun photos taken, would be happy to work with you to do some fun stuff. All right. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye.